segment we haven't brought up in a while, but we have some Marquee Network drama.
Oh my God, I'm glad we brought it up because people love when we talk about the Marquee Network.
Yeah, I mean, it's our biggest hits, some of our biggest hits on YouTube, at least, or it used to be our old YouTube channel. Our resurrected YouTube channel has, I don't think we've done this since we've resurrected the YouTube
No,
channel.
we haven't. We
So
haven't.
we'll see how the numbers skyrocket for this. But the Marquee Network, which I no longer receive, I'm living
Oh,
in
really?
Michigan. Yeah, I don't think there is any way I could get it. I would get all the games through MLB TV, but
Oh, right, right.
the network itself I don't get, which I'd never really watched the ancillary programming on Marquee Network. They had a few maybe interesting things, but mostly
I think the only thing I remember you saying you watched was I think this was during COVID. As they launch during COVID or something, and
they did.
they replayed all of the playoffs or something from
Yes, you're right.
2016.
That was worthwhile, especially during lockdown. The weirdest time of any of our lives. I think they play the Ryan Sandberg game incessantly, but they're trying to create some original programming that might people might find interesting. And to that effect, they have come up with a new show called The Reporters on Sunday mornings,
Mm.
which seems eerily reminiscent of a show I remember as a kid, or at least growing up, maybe in high school. On
Yeah,
ESPN, it was the Sports
sports right.
Reporters.
Yeah, the sports reporters, and it was like all the old classic reporters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know it had Mitch Albom from Detroit. I mean, it was a rotating crew, but it was like big time national sports writers.
Yeah, there was a dude from Chicago, Rob with a T. I can't think of his name. He was on there, and so was
There's somebody from Boston,
yeah. It was a
Ryan, I
cool
think.
show, actually.
There was, I think, at one time they had an old boxing guy, Frank something, that wore the classic, 1950s
Yeah,
hat, and he was just like smoking a cigar. It was
yeah,
just,
yeah. Exactly. It
I
was.
think,
It was a great show. I
I think
loved
the,
it.
the producers at Marquee Network are trying to recapture that but with a Cubs twist with
Ooh,
their,
who is it? Do tell.
well, at least the episode in question that I'm going to discuss had David Haw from the Haw and Mully and Haw show on 670 The Score. It had Maddie Lee from the Sun Times. It had Peggy Kaczynski,
Mm.
who I'm not sure who she's with, but she's been a sports media stalwart in Chicago for decades. Those are the three, at least, principals that I'm aware of. But
I last saw her on NBC
okay,
Sports.
yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right. But so it's kind of a smattering of opinions from different media across Chicago, which seems like a good idea on the surface until you realize the creative control, the censorship that might be
Ooh,
involved with
really?
the
Do
Marquee Network.
tell. Do tell, Smitty. Do tell.
David Haw, I listen to Mully and Haw quite a bit in the mornings, and David Haw's favorite subject lately has been the transparency or lack thereof by Cubs leadership, specifically Jed Hoyer, and how it differs drastically from the really refreshing transparency policy by that Theo Epstein employed in his years as president of the Cubs. So he was contrasting that to what Jed Hoyer has done, and specifically over the last couple of years, how nobody really understands what his plan is. Theo is very famous for the plan and
Yeah,
mocked over and over again for the plan, when the plan actually led to a World
I
Series.
I never mocked him for the plan.
Well, we had
Wait, there could be evidence that I did.
yeah, there's evidence that the plan worked and that they went to three consecutive NLCSs, won a World
Blah
Series.
blah blah.
You could talk about how it didn't work, is that it did not lead to sustained success, as what the real idea behind of it was, as we've
Yeah,
now
true.
seen. They're in yet another rebuild. The problem is we don't really understand if they are rebuilding or they're building. We've talked about this ad nauseum, and this has been a favorite subject of David Haw over the recent weeks, to the point where Jed Hoyer has tried to explain the plan, or his plan at least, a few different ways last week, and it really didn't do anything for anyone because he kind of speaks in vague terms, and people call it word salad, that's kind of a new phrase I've heard over the last 5 years or so. It really describes how Jed Hoyer is describing what they are doing. It says a lot of words that don't really amount to anything. He used you need to be tethered to reality is the way to describe how Cubs fans or how people should be viewing what the Cubs are right now, and that they can't just go out and buy a World Series, which is a whole nother subject for another time. But David Haw was at least consistent with his criticism when he was on The Reporters on Marquee Network, because he brought up this lack of transparency again and just questioning what Jed's plans were. At which point, producers rushed in and stopped recording due to technical difficulties.
Are you kidding?
Which is, I'm not kidding.
Holy shit!
This has been reported by Paul Sullivan in the Chicago Tribune. They were told they were having technical difficulties and needed to stop for a moment, which is, it's a new network. They can have technical difficulties. They would just start recording again. But when the technical difficulties were resolved, the producers came in and told all the reporters there not to speak of this transparency issue and to move on to another subject.
Holy shit.
To which point, all the reporters looked back and forth and could not believe that they were experiencing the peak irony that a segment about transparency was being squashed by the producers of this show. I mean, it couldn't be just the irony is just too beautiful. So Maddie Lee was sure to point that out in the article that Paul Sullivan wrote. So they did move on, not that they were offended or anything, but they just couldn't believe that this is how it's going to go. And now that this article has been written, it is public knowledge that they tried to squash this, which is just pathetic on the Cubs' part. If you want to create interesting programming, you need to let people say what they want to say. Educated reporters who know what they're talking about, they might have opinions that you don't like, but they're not yahoos on social media or jackasses like you and me on podcasts that have no culpability or any responsibility to adhere to the truth. At least we can say whatever the fuck we want. But David Haw has some respectability. There's no reason to stop him from speaking his mind on a show. If you want people to watch your show, you need to let people say what they want to say. So
that's unbelievable.
The Cubs have addressed it, or at least Marquee Network has addressed this after the article came out, exposing their hypocrisy. The show will now be aired live on Sunday mornings instead of taped, so that no shenanigans like technical difficulties can squash subjects. That, at least in theory, there may be a stern warning to all parties involved that they are not allowed to talk about certain subjects. It's pathetic. Since it may have just been a mistake by a really cautious producer that is now, a stain on Marquee Network and the Cubs, or maybe this was a policy that this was something that was not supposed to be talked about. So it's hard to say now. I think there's potential that the live version of the show could be more interesting and, take care of this potential censorship issue, but it's just ridiculous. It's just another reason not to be interested in the Marquee Network, that it's come to this, that they're worried about what is being said on their air, that they're that defensive, at least about their current state. So again, I don't get Marquee Network. I was never going to watch The Reporters. It may have become an interesting thing. It might still yet, but I doubt I'll ever see it. The only way it became interesting is how it is just an embarrassing mark on, first of all, the Cubs' lack of transparency and their lack of, their sensitivity to that subject. I think it just kind of exposes how they don't really have a plan and they don't want people to talk about it. So meanwhile, we're settling with a team that should have a top 5 payroll as it had over time, should be a above 500 team, or at least working towards that, which Cubs are working directly away from that at this point. So that's a subject for another show, but it's sad that a major market team is acting like a small market team and has their own fucking television network to support that major market team. Not only can't they support the team, they can't even support proper journalism. So that is our Marquee Network drama for the week.
Dang, that is crazy shit there.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You didn't even
Um,
know about it. You seem very blindsided and astonished that such
I'm
things
just
could happen.
astonished that in this day and age, especially since these guys all have other platforms, right? So they're going to talk about it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why this reminds me of Steve Stone getting fired because
Yes.
he was honest about his assessment of the ball club.
Yeah, in the early 2000s
Yeah,
when he and
I mean
Chip
this is
Carey were let go. Did Chip Carey, he was part of it. Maybe he quit over, I forget the whole
yeah. I think they
scenario.
were both let go. I
He
mean,
kind
Chip
of
Carey was
Chip
probably
had
let
a
go.
well, he had
He
a
was yeah he
well, he had
was
jobs in his back pocket with his
yeah
dad working for the Braves, and
yeah
he no one needs to worry about Chip Carey. But yeah, that whole saga. It does. I thought the same thing. I'm glad you brought that up with how their Cubs have always been a little bit sensitive to their own media,
yeah.
state-run media, as you would say.
And I would thought that at that time it was just like the Tribune Company, but apparently it's
Runs
just
deeper than that.
runs deeper than that.
Word Hole Media.